The NBA or the EuroLeague? I think it's time to stop debating which is better and accept that both are great, but far from perfect. Let's look at the biggest problems of each league and what they should learn from one another to become perfect! I think it's best to start from the foundation of each league, aka the structure. One of the biggest issues that the NBA is facing right now is competitiveness in the regular season. Due to 82 games, back-to-backs, and load management, quite a few regular season games lack intensity, and it shows.
Smart left wide open for three. And then gets the long rebound, he'll try it again. Same result.
As Dario Saric puts it, in the NBA, if you play badly or don't compete well, you always have the next game. He then compares it to Europe, saying, in Europe, every game is important. You need to win or you're going to die. Believe me, EuroLeague's slogan, "Every game matters," is not just a marketing ploy. The main reason why EuroLeague's regular season is much more competitive is, of course, the number of games they play. First, there are fewer teams in the league at 18 total that play each other only twice, one home and one away. That adds up to 34 games for each team. Then there's the factor of only 8 teams making the playoffs, but we'll get to that later. Wade Baldwin, who actually competed in both of these leagues, had this to say when retweeting a video of intense defense in the NBA.
For Hotlanta right now. Band hands to Hero against Trae Young to the paint, back to Band. Over Capella.
The solution for the NBA is obvious: play fewer games. But as we've seen with the latest CBA agreement, no one wants to give up the money. I mean, real big money. But what about a middle ground, as Steve Kerr and others have suggested?
I feel terrible for fans who buy tickets who are expecting to see someone play and they don't get to see that person play. That's why I'm going to continue to advocate for 72-game seasons.
What if teams in the perfect NBA would play 72 games in the regular season without back-to-backs? It could be achieved by shortening the preseason, for example. Another argument against reducing the number of games is that historic achievements and records would become incomparable through the years. Since fewer games would mean that, for example, LeBron's already unbreakable all-time scoring record would truly be unbreakable. 82 games has been a staple since 1967, a time when there were only 12 teams in the league, so realistically, I don't expect anything to happen here. It's worth mentioning that the NBA is implementing an in-season tournament from the 2023-24 season, which could potentially add some weight to otherwise insignificant games. Meanwhile, as competitive as EuroLeague is in the regular season, the playoffs are something EuroLeague could learn from the NBA, and it seems that they're already on top of it. From 2016 till 2023, only 8 out of 18 teams made the postseason, which was kind of unfair, creating a situation where 12 teams were in the playoff race, but ultimately only 8 could advance. And the margins between those teams were really slim. On top of that, the higher budget teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, and few others almost never missed the playoffs, so most teams had even less of a chance to advance. However, from the 2023-24 season, the EuroLeague is set to implement a play-in tournament. This will enable teams from 10th to 7th seed to fight it out like they do in the NBA.
We are the champions. Come on, man.
The reception of this news hasn't been all positive so far though, as some fans and players think that the play-in tournament will actually make the EuroLeague less competitive and fair.
You better figure it out in 34, 35 games. I'm so sorry. This league is too competitive. Guys are too good from top to bottom to throw a playing game. All the basketball junkies, I love you, but figure it out, man. I don't want to play no playing game.
I would like to hear your opinion in the comments. Do you think the play-in tournament will enhance or diminish the competitiveness in the EuroLeague? Also, before we move on, make sure that you are subscribed to our channel, as we are giving away that Nikola Jokic jersey to one lucky subscriber once we hit 75,000. Now, if there's one thing that everyone agrees on, it's that the NBA playoffs is the most polished, highest level basketball product you can get. So I don't think there's anything the NBA could learn from the EuroLeague here. On the side of the EuroLeague, it's a different story. Right now, teams play best of 5 quarterfinals and then 4 of them advance to the final 4. That is a single elimination tournament happening over a single weekend in a neutral arena, and it does have its charm. Obviously, it's nice that all the EuroLeague stars come together to one location for a weekend of highest level basketball, but 2 games shouldn't really determine who's the champion after the grueling battles in the regular season.
Ewing working against foul, beats him with the dribble, pulls up at the elbow, high arcing James, good!
While a best-of-7 series would be a very difficult thing to pull off with the European basketball calendar, I do think the perfect EuroLeague should at least have a best-of-3 or best-of-5 format for semifinals and finals. I'm sure that most EuroLeague fans would prefer seeing the developing stories, newborn rivalries, highest level of coaching, game-to-game adjustments, and most importantly, home crowds creating insane atmospheres all throughout playoffs and finals. As of right now, EuroLeague's management argues that the Final Four is the crème de la crème, the occasion when the best teams, players, coaches, sponsors, media, and VIP guests gather in the same city for a few days to celebrate the end of the season. Well, guess what? The perfect EuroLeague could just do an all-star game and pretty much accomplish all that. The players seem to agree too.
It needs to be an all-star game.
Yeah.
A nice little 2-day weekend.
Yeah.
Do it in Athens or like Serbia or like Lithuania, somewhere that got crazy fans.
But okay, when the season is over, how does a perfect off-season look for each league? I think the NBA has pretty much nailed down the perfect ecosystem with their draft, free agency, and summer league.
Barlow, Wemby for three, butter!
If there's one thing that could use some adjustments, it would be the NBA draft, but only because it does incentivize non-contenders to tank. Perhaps the perfect NBA could have even stricter odds in the draft lottery. For example, 5 worst teams having the same chance of getting the first pick.
And that means that the #1 pick in the 2023 NBA draft goes to the San Antonio Spurs.
The offseason is usually the time for NBA teams to reset and start the season fresh. In Europe, it's also the time to reset, but usually in a much more dramatic way. That is because the EuroLeague does not have official trades that could enable teams to improve rosters mid-season. Therefore, it's all about the free agency and the contracts they sign in the summer. Sure, there are some free agents signed here and there during the season, but let's be honest, trades would add a whole different dimension to this perfect EuroLeague and make the regular season even more entertaining for everyone. Now let's move on to the actual game of basketball and its rules. I think this is where we should look at what each league could directly adopt from each other. One of the biggest talking points when it comes to the comparison between the NBA and the EuroLeague is how much harder it is to score in Europe. You could say it is what makes EuroLeague so attractive to a pure basketball head. But when we look at it from the point of view of entertainment, not everyone finds these score lines or these kinds of possessions attractive. On the flip side, the NBA now is all about scoring, and many former players, including Pau Gasol, go as far as saying the defense has disappeared there. While I don't think the NBA should aim to go back to the times of the early 2000s,
a lot of times for knocking a player's hand away, you'll get called for that.
it's clear that the game has become way too offense-oriented. So, what could each league learn from each other? I would argue that one of the biggest reasons why it is so much easier to score in the NBA is the defensive 3-second rule. While defensive 3 seconds is statistically the least consistently called rule, it does exist and shape the way teams arrange their defense. Specifically, it limits how much influence a rim-protecting center has on defense. For example, in Europe, where this rule does not exist, centers like Walter Tavares cement the interior defense and really intimidate anyone coming into the paint.
Throws it off. Oh, it's Tavares!
Also, eliminating this rule would influence not just the inside scoring, but the perimeter too, as we would see way less driving, attracting help, and then kicking out the ball for an open three. Next up, and this one is kinda obvious, the NBA refs should call the games in a stricter way. There's a reason why every year you can find a fresh worst uncalled travels compilation on YouTube. The league should just encourage the refs to follow the rulebook as it is written.
It's pathetic. For me to watch this game the way I was taught how to play the game and to watch this and what they allow to let go, it's an embarrassment. The athletes are incredible, but they're getting away with murder, and I blame the officials.
The NBA could also change the goaltending and basket interference rules to be like in Europe. Currently, the defensive player will get called for goaltending when the ball is touched on its downward trajectory to the basket, which matches the EuroLeague. But in the EuroLeague, you can actually swat away the ball that's bouncing on the rim, adding yet another dimension to defense. On the offensive side, EuroLeague players are able to tip the ball in or follow it up with a putback dunk, regardless of whether the ball is inside or outside the cylinder. In my opinion, those two changes would make the NBA games even more exciting for the fans, as players would be encouraged to make more aggressive plays around the basket without the fear of being penalized. Meanwhile, the EuroLeague could fix the entertainment aspect by widening the court. I know not everyone is going to agree with this one, but I do think more spacing in Europe would allow the game to be more free-flowing and attractive for broader audiences. Right now, the EuroLeague is almost exclusively followed by people supporting their local teams, and implementing more offense-friendly spacing could potentially attract more American fans or even the Asian market. There's been news of ESPN broadcasting the whole EuroLeague season in the US, so we'll see if that will finally expand EuroLeague's fanbase to other continents. I also think something needs to be done about the length of games in the NBA. If making the season shorter by reducing the number of games sounds not likely, then reducing the timeout length and the ads is practically impossible. But my god, those 3 to 4 minute NBA timeouts are making a basketball game into a 3-hour event. For example, in the EuroLeague, where the timeouts are 1 minute long, the game takes about 1 hour 45 minutes. Of course, they do play 8 minutes fewer than in the NBA too. Well, at least it's not like the NFL. Staying on the topic of timeouts, EuroLeague could really adapt the live ball timeout rule. Right now, only coaches are able to call timeouts, and only when the ball is not in play. I think we're missing out on some great EuroLeague clutch moments just because of this.
Polonara just all over. Ahmed is saying to the referee, come on ref, it's gotta be a foul.
Another minor improvement when it comes to the rules in the EuroLeague could be expanding the coaches' challenge. Right now, the EuroLeague allows the coaches to challenge calls, but only on some occasions. For example, to see if a shot was a 2 or a 3, or most commonly to review if the foul was unsportsmanlike or a common one. The NBA does it way better, as coaches are able to challenge almost every single call.
And Jimmy Butler was called for the foul. He's asking Eric Spoelstra to challenge, and Coach Spo has asked for the challenge.
I'm sure there are many more rules that could be adopted by one league or the other, so let me know in the comments which ones do you think should be. Now, the final category we're going to look at is marketing, the one area where the EuroLeague is no match to the NBA, and it's not even close. What's important to understand when talking about the EuroLeague or European basketball in general is that basketball will probably never be the most popular sport in Europe. Football is king here. And that's why basketball teams and the EuroLeague are struggling financially, so to expect a similar level of marketing wouldn't be fair. One crucial difference between these two leagues is that in the NBA, the players are the stars, while in the EuroLeague, teams as a whole and their coaches get all the spotlight. Although it makes for some hilarious scenes every now and then,
in your eyes, you're good guys!
The EuroLeague would be much more marketable if their players would be more popular. Obviously, not an easy task, knowing the level of talent will always be lower, but there are ways to do it. For one, giving players freedom to be more vocal on social media. Now, the players are afraid to be outspoken on social media because it could actually affect their market value. Team managements in Europe prefer to shield everyone from any outside attention, including social and traditional media, just so all the focus is on the game. If the players were able to express themselves more freely, then the fans could relate to them more, hence drawing more people to watch EuroLeague games. Or for example, that could help sell more merchandise. Oh wait, the EuroLeague doesn't actually sell any merchandise? Literally, there is no one store where you could buy your favorite players' jerseys. So I guess that illustrates perfectly where marketing in the EuroLeague stands. Another thing is that usually if anyone has any bit of charisma in the EuroLeague, it's usually the coaches.
Sorry, downward pick and roll. Yeah. Shaken, not stirred.
I imagine the perfect EuroLeague would encourage the players to be more vocal, and we would see more of what's possible on the other side of the Atlantic. The NBA players aren't afraid to voice their opinions or even clash with each other publicly.
You know, his priorities tend to vary. That's why he dressed the way he does. He, approaches basketball the way he does, the comments he makes. Like I said with the Draymond quote, insecurity is loud.
Which is just textbook entertainment writing itself. On the other hand, we've seen how the NBA becoming purely a players' league has impacted the bond between the fans and the teams. Year by year, it seems that there are less and less fans loyal to a single team. And usually the loyal ones are the ones who are rooting for their hometown team. Ever since the formation of super teams, we've seen more and more bandwagon fans, who are only there for the period that their favorite player plays there.
It's all trash! You're all trash! You're all trash!
Once that superstar leaves, so does half of the team's fans, which hurts both the teams and the league. Still, it is probably a better alternative to being a team's coaches league, but the NBA could look for improvements in that aspect. For example, a system where loyalty to the club that drafted you rewards both the player and the team financially, with 20% of the salary not counting towards the salary cap. Players staying with one team would keep those fan bases more stable, as we've seen many times before. Just to finish up about the marketing, there is one thing that you simply cannot change, and that is fan culture. European basketball fans are surely the best in the world, creating atmospheres like these on a regular basis. But as much as we would enjoy seeing such intensity and passion in the NBA, it just cannot happen. Culture is just culture. But even then, the EuroLeague sometimes fails to recognize their greatness and instead focuses only on the actual game in their promotion. But that's why we are here, and if you enjoy our coverage of European and NBA basketball, make sure to check out basketnews.com, where you can find the latest basketball news, interviews, opinion articles, and much more additional content. Now, to wrap this whole video up, I think it's quite clear that both leagues have room to improve, but I'm sure all those changes sound much easier on paper than in reality, starting with financials, history, records, traditions, and many more moving parts. While I don't expect the NBA to lose millions by reducing games, I can see them tightening the referee work and encouraging defense through some rule changes. On the side of the EuroLeague, the series instead of knockouts in the Final Four is really what should bring it to the next level. And of course all the marketing stuff I just mentioned, but there is a new CEO in the league, so we'll see what happens there. That is all in this video. Let me know in the comments what you would change in both leagues to make them perfect. Also make sure to like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.